Welcome to Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, brought to you by Holy Chuck Burgers. Our business is burgers.
Good morning, Katarina Witt. There's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair.
Sponsored by Maxwell's Clothiers, your bespoke tailor since 1961. And now, your host of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, Chuck Basti. And welcome back to another segment of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo.
That's me.
And we'd like to thank Holy Chuck Burger for providing us with this show today. I'm Cam LaRock, your producer, alongside, of course, Chuck Basti, the host. Chuck, what's going on?
Well, I don't know if you can just check the smile on my face, Cameron, but I'm an excited boy today because we have Dr. John Carlos in the house today. And it's taken us about 3 years and about a half an hour to get the man on the wire today, but we finally got it done, and we got the doctor in the house.
It took us a little bit, but we got things ready to roll, and I'm excited. I'm good to go. So why don't you tell us a little bit how you made this happen?
Yeah, before you even go, because this is an important segment here. So this is kind of a funny story. So just humor me on this one because you've heard this 1,000 times, but the viewers haven't heard this. I'm on the phone with my two friends that I ran track and field with from 80s and 90s. And we were making fun of everything, and all of a sudden the phone rings. And my friend lives in Silicon Valley. He works for Apple. So while I see the phone comes up as a California phone number, I think my friend Mark is punking me. Yeah. And he's just like, is this Chuck Basti? I'm like, yes, this is. He's like, this is John Carlos. And I'm like, John Carlos. You want me to believe this is John Carlos, the 1968 bronze medalist in the 200-meter dash, John Carlos? There's only one John Carlos, baby, is the response I get back. I'm like, Mark, like, you're just like, are you trying to punk me? You're not
getting me, man.
Yeah, I'm just like, so first of all, nice try. John Carlos doesn't know I exist. Number two, John Carlos would never know what my phone number is. So how would John Carlos call me? He's like, you left me a message. I'm just calling you back. I'm like, wait a minute. You sound like John Carlos. That's what I've been trying to tell you, baby. This is John Carlos. And then my whole world stops because I'm like, oh my God, no way. I just messed this up 150%. It was John Carlos calling me. It only took 3 years to get back to him. But,
3 years later, and he's here now. So
yes. So
I
John
might as well get out of
Carlos
here.
Is part of one of the most iconic civil rights pictures of all time. Mm-hmm. He remains a lifelong human rights activist, a founding member of the Olympic Project for Human Rights. And my guest today, I'm going to bring up Dr. John Carlos. And there he is.
Hi, Chuck. It's good to be with you.
Thank you very much. It's my great honor to have you on the show, John Carlos. Thank you for joining us.
It's my honor as well.
Well, listen, I just I told everyone the story of like how you called me, and I didn't know it was you, and I didn't believe it was you because, like, I don't know, like I didn't think that was possible. But thank you for reaching out to me. I've wanted to have you on my show for years now. I grew up running track and field. I was an average 100-meter dash. I topped out at 10.6 in the 100, and I had a 22 200 meter as well. But I'm 5'8", so my legs just weren't as good on the back stretch, on the split, on the second half of the 200. I just got crushed. And I've seen your picture, your story, my entire life. And I've had some great guests on my show that I'm very proud to actually have. But you, sir, have now taken the cake. I'm just elated to have you on the show. So thanks a lot for sharing your story with me.
Chuck, I'm honored to be here, man. You know, like it's a godsend. You know, just like you said that you thought they was pranking you.
Yeah.
You know, when I was calling, I had a buddy of mine named Chuck. He was a bartender in Montreal. And that's who I thought I was calling when I called you.
Yeah.
And I say it's ironic. That's why I said to you that day, I said, Chuck, it's like a godsend, man. I said, because you got the show, you've been trying to get in touch with me. Here I am. I said, but I was actually looking for Chuck from Montreal. It's all good.
Well, I'm glad that you called me as well. And I wanted to start the show up as well because I wanted to bring up the picture that's so iconic that If anyone who hasn't seen it, will they see it now? And I'll have my producer, Cameron Rock, bring up the iconic picture. And this is the picture that has just been shared around the world. It's timeless. This is October 16th, 1968. Crazy time in history. Martin Luther King had just been assassinated 6 months earlier. Robert Kennedy had just been assassinated 4 months earlier. And here you are on the right side of the picture here, standing beside Tommie Smith and Peter Norman on the podium. There are many layers to this picture that most people don't understand or know. So can you walk through most people's understanding of the layers of the protest that you were indicating here? Cam, bring the picture back up, please. And we'll go through what the picture represents to a person who doesn't understand what they're looking at.
Okay, this is the 1968 Olympic Games, which was the first time the games had ever been televised on a universal level, as well as the first time it's ever been televised in Technicolor. We felt that we wanted to represent the power of blackness in terms of this new venture in Technicolor. So then we decided that the gloves would be apropos for the situation, to wear the black gloves. Mr. Smith wore a black scarf on his neck to exemplify black pride. I wore a black jersey or a sweater over my USA uniform because I was showing my shame for America. I felt America could have done better. I didn't want to brag that I'm American. So then, the fact that there's a lot of people going to and from school every day, 10, 15 miles a day with no shoes. So we thought about the poverty of America as well, the greatest nation in the world. And of course, we took the Puma shoe out there because the Puma shoe was good to people that was less fortunate financially to support their endeavors in track and field. I grew up through, Puma as a young kid running in high school and began to work for them. So that was a part of my history, and I was delighted to take that shoe out on the victory stand as well.
I've watched video clips of you walking up to the podium. And what I noticed after a trained eye to see is because you have a glove on your left hand and Tommie has a glove on his right hand, signifying solidarity and unity. But if you look at the video, the glove hand that you have your Puma shoes behind that one glove hand hiding the glove, because there is the villain of the story, Avery, and we'll call Avery Brundage, who is the IOC president, who I'm not a fan of. He was supposed to come and award your medals, and Tommie, as far as I heard, had said, I don't want to shake his hand, so I'm wearing gloves. And I think it's really indicative that behind every great story, there's a villain that made it happen. And with Avery Brundage,
my understanding, originally the gloves were supposed to be bought for Tommie and Lee not to have to shake Avery Brundage's hand. If they were going to shake his hand at all, that they would put the black gloves on. But I didn't think that Avery Brundage wanted to come out there at that particular time. No way, because he had been boasted about, you boys better not do this and that. And already he then got a few of the athletes a little disturbed by referring to them as boys. They over there doing a man's job, a woman's job, So a lot of insulting things was going on at that particular time, but it all worked out at the end.
Yeah, and I always say that behind one great story, there's always a villain that made it happen. And it's just ironic. They think they're trying to get their own way, and they created a movement against exactly what they would stand on a soapbox for their entire life speaking against.
Well, you have to realize that the Olympic Games is a wonderful thing in the sense of athletics, but it goes far beyond that. It's into political aspirations as well as economic aspirations. And you sit back and you say, well, the athletes are the one that draws the crowd, sell the tickets, sell the popcorn, the hot dogs, and the whole nine. And what do they get in return? An opportunity to watch them quest their services again 4 years later, to call yourself an Olympian. Many Olympians I know around the world have done well by representing the United States or Chile or wherever in the world, but they don't get the compensation for the work that they do on the world level. So, along those lines, it's always about trying to bring attention to things that people need to take into account.
No, I wanted to segue into the times of 1968 because that was a very indicative time of civil unrest, the Vietnam War, obviously Olympics almost being boycotted as well. Walk me through your conversations. I understand that you met with MLK 10 days before he was assassinated in Memphis. You had interactions with Malcolm X as well. But I just thought we'd just speak to that first.
Well, let me just tell you, before I even get to that, man, I got to tell you that I think I was born June 5th, 1945, to be in Mexico, October 16th, 1968, and beyond. Okay. And the reason I say this is because when I was a kid, you know, whoever the creator is showed me a vision, a movie of me as a kid in a stadium. I didn't know what a stadium was, but it was a grass field. And I could hear everybody out there yippee-ki-yay, as I said, with excitement. And I'm out there in the box standing in this field by myself. And it dawned on me after maybe a minute or so that, hey, man, they happy about something you did because I never knew what I did. But by the time it dawned on me that I'm making adults happy, you know, as a little kid, you want to put your hand up and let the world see you. You up on your toes. You want everybody to see you. And just as I went to put my hand up, it froze in time about where you would see it in the picture of today. And people ask me, say, well, why that? Why was that? And I said, because all of the joy that was happening at that precise moment, just like somebody snapped a finger and it went away. And anger and vengeance and hatred came in, spitting and throwing and telling you where to go in the whole 9 yards. Now imagine that being thrust on a 7-8 year old kid to see this. So it had me, you know, like starstruck for the rest of the day. My father had asked me later on that evening, son, what's the matter? I said, Daddy, I was in a movie. And I explained to him. But not until I get on the victory stand years later did I realize, oh, shit, this is what this vision was about. This is what that movie was about. Because the exact same thing that happened in the vision happened on that victory stand. Okay? But leading up to that, he had me to meet absolutely great people. He had me to meet Adam Clayton Powell earlier in my young life when I went to religion, man, looking for not for God or religion. I'm looking for a higher power, someone that could help try and fill these voids in my mind. So I went to church looking for it. I come out of church, man. I run into Malcolm X as a young kid, 13 years old. You know, I'm going down the mosque to see who this guy Malcolm X is because he was saying such high level structural concept of society at that time. Like, so man, Daddy, who is that? I want to go down and see this guy. And he's telling me, nah, son, you don't need to go down there. You can go down there and get yourself in trouble. But after I heard him the third time, I was compelled to go. And then when I went down there and listened to him, and I remember they were putting out these folding seats, and there was 3 guys sitting on the front row. And I went up to him and asked him, say, man, who is Malcolm X? And they said, there he is over there. There was 2 people over there. I said, which one? They said, the one with the glasses on. I looked at him, I said, man, that's not Malcolm X. And they told me, yeah, it's Malcolm X. It's not Malcolm X. Why you think it's not Malcolm X? I said, man, he's too light-skinned to be Malcolm X. Malcolm X, to me, was the black man just blowing black. So when I saw him, they said that's him. And when he went on the podium, it was just a matter of seconds. I knew it was him. I knew I was with a man that was very well-versed, very, very articulate. You know, he got my attention right away. And a lot of things he said the same things my father said, but this man that was saying it publicly to the world. So I got a chance to run with him for about 1.5 years and suck up as much knowledge as I could, just going from one location to another location with him. And then coming on down the line, I had an opportunity to meet, Martin Luther King. And this is roughly, like, say, 10 days or so, from the day of his demise. And the way I met him was I left East Texas State University and I went back to New York, figure out what I'm going to do. I'm young, I'm married, I got a kid. What am I going to do? And as I went back to help my mom, I was painting the kitchen and talking to my mom, and the phone went off. It was Professor Harry Edwards. And he invited me to a meeting, asked me, could I attend this meeting? People would like to have me come. And I remember telling my mom, so they invited me. She said, well, if they invite you, you need to be there. So I begged off. I got myself together and I went down to the hotel where they were staying. And I sat there because I was in Marble, just being in the hotel. I ain't never went into too many of the hotels downtown New York as long as I grew up. So once I shook that off, I went to the desk and I asked for SCLC. At that time, I didn't know what SCLC was. And let me explain to you what it is, Southern Christian Leadership, okay? So conference, that is. So then when I went up there and knocked on the door and the guy that I saw open the door, I'm looking at it in my mind and saying, man, it's him, but it's not him, but it is him, but it can't be him. I know it's him. And that was Reverend Andrew Young. And it blew me away because I'm looking at him and I'm saying, man, I know it's Andrew Young, but I know Andrew Young is like 6'3" or 6'4". You know, from the pictures that I saw, and I'm thinking right away, man, the guy that took his pictures must have been laying on his back. Straight up, you know. But Mr. Young was very cordial, nice, invited me in, and I'm sitting there and I'm cool. But then after a while, you sit there, they ask you, would you like coffee? Would you like a soda? Would you like a sandwich? The whole nine. But the bottom line is you begin to realize as a youngster, you sitting in the room and all those people walking back and forth are the luminaries that you and your parents used to watch on TV. And then you begin to shake a little bit. What am I doing here? What am I doing amongst these people? And then you wait 20 minutes, man, 25 minutes, and a door opens, side door, and Dr. King walks out into the first person I thought about was my mother. I said, man, my mother needs to be a rock in my pocket or a bug on my lapel right now. She needs to be a part of me right now because she needs to be here for this. Okay? He walked in the room, you know, you used the old metaphor, like say petrified wood. Well, that's what I felt like for that precise moment, petrified wood. Like I was like, oh, I don't believe this. Okay? But he realized at the same time that I was a little shaky and he started cracking jokes to just chill me out. Yeah. And other people that was in there in the room as well. But then when we got down to business, the man said that he had a concern about the people in Memphis, Tennessee, the sanitation workers. You know, but in the process, he's talking about they sent him a letter and they told him that he won't have to wait long. They got a letter with a bullet with his name on it. He won't have to wait long for it. My question to him was at the end of this meeting, why would you go back to Memphis? They threatened your life. He said to me, he said, John, you know something? That's a very good question. He said, you know, I've done so much in the flesh. And all over the world, they're talking about me, what I've done. He said, that would be nothing to what I would be doing in the spirit if they was to take my life. He said, if you think I'm something in the flesh, that's nothing to what would happen in the spirit. And exactly when it took his life, he took off just like that spirit all over the world. Get strength and inspiration from him. So along the way, what I'm saying is, man, I had a stair step from birth all the way up to where you saw in Mexico City. And, you know, people think I should be leveling off or going down, but I'm rising. I'm still going up. It's all about trying to each one teach one.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be in Washington, D.C. in the fall. I had a hockey tour in the States, and I took the day that I had. It was actually the day before Election Day, November the 7th. And I was able to walk down from the mall down to the memorial for MLK. And look at every single quote. Yeah, there we are there in front of the memorial.
Right.
And every one of his quotes along the wall that I sat with for 5 minutes and just really actually took in, because I've heard the quotes before, but being in that presence of that memorial and all the people who've passed through that gateway, I thought it was almost like hallowed ground. And moving forward with his work, as you said, you know, after he passed away, you know, his legacy became bigger than life, and it really was. It gets to the point where you guys get to the podium in 68. You have the choice at that point to take your medals, go back to America, get a job, get something to do with promotion or your Olympic fortunes that you've earned, and you chose to take that moment in history and to willingly choose to basically throw that all away in 1968 by doing that. And one of the things I think that is amazing is Peter Norman stands with you on that podium, and the story is told it 1,000 times. You know, he was a willing participant in that as well. And I think in educating people moving forward, people like myself who had never heard that story before, or 68, is how do you create allies? Like what you did there created allies. You know, it helps people to transfer through their bigotry, through their indoctrination, because we don't know any different. We're just young kids going into school and we're learning what they're teaching us. And then as an adult, I have to unlearn what I was taught to be history or taught to be the truth, which isn't the truth. And someone like yourself and Tommie Smith and Peter Norman have taken that narrative and changed that narrative and then put that little pebble into the pond, as Peter Norman said, and had that ripple effect go across. And I just wanted to start off with the picture of Peter Norman, just so people know who we're talking about. Cam, if we can pull up. There's a movie that, there you go, is Salute. That came out in 2008 that told the Peter Norman story as well. And if you can go online and grab that, we'll put the links to the show on that as well, for that as well. But I want to go to where my bucket list is right now. Is I want to go to San Jose State, and I want to see the statue that was commemorated for you and Tommie Smith. There it is. I mean, that's something where Rigo 23 had be able to put that to fruition. Peter Norman flew in from Australia. And the story that I hear it as is Peter Norman was asked to be in that podium with you two. And he said, no, I want people to stand with Tommie and John as an advocate for human rights. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And I just thought that was just about the most selfless, most enduring thing that a man could take himself off of what he had earned and let other people stand with you two forever.
Let me tell you a little something about that, man.
Yeah.
When they were building the statues, they wanted Peter to come when they gave a tribute to us at San Jose. Groundbreaking. And yeah, it was the groundbreaking. That's right. And they wanted Peter to come in. No, excuse me. It wasn't the groundbreaking. It was the unveiling.
Okay.
And they wanted Peter to come in and be the introduction for John Carlos. But it was so much money involved, and flying him all the way in from Australia. So they decided they would use a guy by the name of Kurt Clayton, which was on San Jose Speed City team. And they went to Dr. Clayton, and Dr. Clayton was upset with Mr. Smith and I about something or the other. So he refused to do it. So they said, well, we're just going to have to spend the money and go get Peter Norman. Well, Peter Norman came in and gave an excellent speech. Just good to see him, period. To have an opportunity to just brother around with him. So anyway, we go from there to the fact that now, man, you distracted me. From now, when you go from there, we sit back and we saying, who are we going to get to come in and really represent? So they had Lee Evans to come in and speak on behalf of Mr. Smith. Well, we gave a great evening, man, for all the people that was there. Everybody had an opportunity to express their views on what had taken place in history. And then we went from there to who is the real perpetrator of all of this. People started talking about, well, whose idea it was. And I say it was my idea without a doubt, none whatsoever. That's what I went to the games for, is to make a statement. And then when artifacts came about, then I selected what artifacts we need and how we was going to use them. I didn't ask for nothing in return. I asked for Mr. Smith to give me a glove. I thought that he would give me a glove because it was his gloves. I gave them back to him. I thought he would have demanded him to give to me, but Mr. Smith has always leaned towards his own self. So I understand. I just leave it alone. But in any case, from that point on, as time went on, we were supposed to get together, and I'm sitting in my house and wondering to myself, man, in 30 days, we all be together. And Mr. Norman was in the transitional period. I get a call out of nowhere and tell me that Peter's gone. Gone where? Peter's dead. It just dropped me straight to the floor. Peter's dead? So yeah. So then prior to him dying, they had these statues built where he came and he gave the speech. But when Mr. Norman came in, they used Mr. Norman in terms of saying, all right, man, we want you to tell your real beliefs about what happened, what went down in that stadium. And Peter Norman was a straight up guy. He said, man, what are y'all getting ready to do? What's going on? I told him, I said, man, we getting ready to make a statement. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you believe in human rights? And he looked at me and he said, of course I believe in human rights. And he expressed to me that his mom and dad were Salvation Army workers. Oh, okay. I said, well, would you like to wear Olympian Project for Human Rights button? So he went to reach for mine. I had to pat him on his hand. Get back. I'll get you one. You can't use this one. But he bought in. Now, when they was building the statues, and I had some of my boys that was living in San Jose would call me, say, man, I see them. They got the statues out. They got Tommie's statue erected already. They're working on yours on the table. I said, well, what about Peter Norman's statue? I don't see one. Well, I jumped in my car, and I drove from L.A. to San Jose and went straight to the administrative office. And I said, hey, what's going on with Mr. Norman? I don't see Mr. Norman up there. So they told me, said, well, man, we don't have anything to do with that. Who goes up and who goes down? We just go by how much money they give us to build this thing. So I went over to where the Black Student Union was. When we used to have our old headquarters over there. And there was a guy named Mr. Fernando. He was over and he told me, so John, he said, to be quite frank with you, man, you guys went to San Jose State. So we're more concerned about you. I said, man, this is not about who went to San Jose State. This is beyond who went where, what, or why. I say, if you put John Carlos up there, you got to put Peter Norman up there. They told me, so well, Peter didn't want to be up there. And when he said that, man, my heart dropped to my feet.
Yeah, I imagine
it wanted to be up there. So I go to the president's office. I said, man, I need to make a long distance call. And I called Peter's house. And just what happened, I called, man, he picks up the phone. He started talking. I said, Pete, I got a question, man. Are you telling me, man, that you don't want to be standing with us on the victory stand? He laughed. Then he got quiet. He laughed again. And he said, John, he said, man, I'd love to be up there. He said, but listen, man, I didn't do what you guys did. He said, I supported what you guys did. Okay? He said, I supported you because I understand your fight because the Aboriginal people are dealing with the same fight here.
Australia, yeah.
He said, I stand with you guys. He said, what I feel like I want to do, man, is avoid me standing there and let anybody that comes through San Jose from the world that want to stand in that spot, man, they can stand there and support you as I did. And when you made the statement about Peter earlier, you know my statements was? I said, Mr. Smith would have never did this in a million years. You understand? That's a so unselfish act. And that's the character of Peter Norman. Okay?
I don't know anybody that would ever do that. And when I
hey,
heard
man,
that,
listen.
incredible.
The real men will. The real men will.
He mentioned allies.
Yeah.
That's the epitome of an ally.
That's right. That's right.
Those are the allies we need today.
Yeah.
That's the sound of Winston that you can't see. That's John's son in the room there.
Yeah.
And that's my question. I mean, you do the work. There's people out there that have been indoctrinated. They have learned to hate. They have learned to be bigotry. They have learned to be racist. They have learned to be prejudiced. We learn these things. We don't grow up. We're not born this way.
That's right.
They've been added as layers. And what I'm asking is, how can we as human beings create allies for LGBTQ, for minorities, for marginalized people, for people of color, for anybody who is bullied out there, regardless of race, religion, height, eye color? It doesn't matter. How do you create an ally?
Hey, man, let me just say this. You have to begin to tell people, say, man, you have to have empathy for people next to you, in front of you, and back of you, side of you. You understand?
Right.
You see, for the bottom line is, if a kid falls down and scars himself, his knees up real bad, and he's out there crying, your human instincts is to go over and help this kid, support him, regardless of what their ethnic background is. If a kid's about to run out in front of a car, your instinct, just humanity, to go out there and try and save this kid. People lose their lives, jump in the pool to try and save people's lives based on empathy for society. If you just go with that flow and teach people this along the way, and you can teach like they teach us in the movie theater, make us think we want some popcorn.
Yeah.
They show me all that shit on TV, and then all of a sudden they black the TV screen, and all of a sudden popcorn jumps out of nowhere, and that shit gone as quick as it popped up. That's how quick it left. And you thought you want some popcorn, and put the Sublime on your ass.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have to do in essence is the same thing in terms of educating people to have them be relaxed. The sad thing is that you and Winston were talking about, the mental health situation in society. Shit, I don't have no mental stress on me. Why? Because the same shit, man, I've been dealing with for so long. This is getting new to people, and particularly, black people. When you sit back and think about black people, they were thinking, when Barack went in office, man, at last, we're free at last. We're free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. And look where we are right now.
We just started, yeah.
And this is like, when I sit back and I heard Trump make the statement years ago about let's make America great again. And from your perspective, America was great to who?
To who and when?
And when? Okay. Now, when it was great to you, that's when you had me in bondage. That's the only time I remember y'all celebrating that y'all had us working for nothing, and whipping on us and doing that kind of crazy shit. So I'm saying, are you referring to making America great like that? Because for me, I ain't never seen America be great relative to me saying, let's get on the start line and let's everybody give an equal shot to try and get there.
Yeah.
Great. Understand? That's great.
One of the things I think that is the great equalizer that we're finally stepping into right now in the information age is just the vast quantities of information that's readily available to people who want to start to look for it. And one of the great advocates that I've been able to look at has been Jane Elliott. And I've had Jane Elliott on my podcast a couple of times. I'm lucky enough to reach out to her and have her on the show.
Right.
And I'm just going to pull up a couple clips here of Jane being on the podcast, and we're going to show what it's like to be an ally. Cam, if you just want to cue up the show.
Correct.
You've seen her before.
If you white folks want to be treated the way blacks are in this society, stand.
Crickets.
Standing here. That says very plainly that you know what's happening. You know you don't want it for you. I want to know why you're so willing to accept it or to allow it to happen for others.
Just like you said, empathy. The next clip as well. Jane was just on the podcast on April 5th, which was the 55th anniversary. So Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on the 4th. Hang on, just pause that. On the 4th of April, 1968. On April 5th, Jane Elliott, as a school teacher, started her blue eye, brown eye exercise. And what you were talking about is just like if a child was down there, what didn't matter what eye color, what skin color it was, you would help that person. And Jane, on the 55th year anniversary of her starting that exercise, came on my podcast and said this.
That night, after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, I thought, tomorrow I'm going to allow my third graders, all white, all Christian third graders, to walk in the shoes of a child of color in this country for a day. And I decided that I would treat my students positively or negatively on the basis of the color of their eyes. I didn't know about racism until I put my third graders through that blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. I learned more that day and the following Monday than my kids did because I had more to learn. So then they had this strange teacher who said, look, blue-eyed people aren't as smart as brown-eyed people. They aren't as clean as brown-eyed people. They aren't as civilized as brown-eyed people. All you blue-eyed people, move your chairs to the back of the room. That had never occurred to them. They had no idea that you could be judged unfairly on the basis of the color of your eyes. It was absolutely astounding what we learned that day and what I learned.
Crazy for real.
Yeah, and like you said, like you say you've been dealing with that for 50 years. I've got blue eyes. And I can tell you one thing right now, like I've never felt like that. The minute a little part of me feels like the pandemic has come by and taken away a little bit of my freedom, watch people lose their shit. Because it's just, we're so fragile of not being exposed to what our white privilege brings us that we just have no idea what that is, because it's so normal for us. There's a great quote that I wanted to bring.
But it's a pattern. It's a pattern first, man. When pressure comes on your ass,
Yes.
and those that feel they have so much to lose, they prefer to just run in front of the train with the thought that I might lose it all. Like, for instance, when they talked about the stock market crash, what was they doing? They was putting a gun to their mouth, jumping out of windows, jumping off of bridges, just based on the fact that I lost some money. Like, it's over, man. I can't start over again.
Yeah.
Okay?
We start over.
See, because they ain't never had to start over shit. Okay? So when shit like that happens, man, you know what that is? That's like a earthquake coming on them.
Yeah. It really
Like,
is.
what? I don't have money. No, man. You don't have money. Now come on down. Like I tell people, I said, man, when shit get bad, I said, man, I feel real comfortable because I know what it feels like to be in bad times and hard times. And I tell people, I say, hey, man, don't live beyond your means. Don't get caught up in the hype.
It's mentally.
You understand? Mm-hmm. The hype is out there. You know what it's like right now to feed these merchants. Okay? Because you caught up in the hype. And now everybody's sitting back trying to figure out which way is up. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to stay home. I don't want to sit down. I don't want to get up. Shit, what do you want to do? I just want to, like the woman said in the movies years ago, I just want to be left alone.
Yes. That was J.D. Salinger from Catcher in the Rye. I just want
Right.
Yeah. There's one quote I wanted to add on to that I thought was very poignant. Obviously, I'm a Canadian, but it doesn't change the fact of where my border draws. I'm part of the human race.
Well, look, man, my part of the human race, I'm a Canadian too.
Yes, you did time up here. So you know what real beer was.
He said, you put time up here. You did time up here.
You did time up here. So my quote is, racism is so normalized in America that when you protest racism, they think you're protesting against America. And that hit me twice.
Are they not one and the same?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they think it is. Yeah, they think racism is so normalized.
Right.
How can you separate that?
Well, it's part of your history.
You get they're trying to take my history away from me. Yeah. But based on beyond that, how do you separate that? Understand? It's like that baseball commentator the other day made the racist statements that he made about the nigger league. He repeated himself a couple times. How many times they gonna let me know what their insides are really all about, and then come and tell me some shit about, I apologize, I didn't mean to say that. Understand?
Yeah.
They done committed the crime already. They done committed the mental abuse already. And now they're going to think they're going to get a pardon. Oh, I'm sorry. And let's forget it until the next time.
So they're trying to remind us.
Okay. This is shit, man, that I'm saying, with people that call themselves liberal, you see some shit like that, that's time for you to shake your ass and move, say something, do something. You understand? That's the only way we're going to make change.
Yeah.
Let me check this out right quick.
Speaking of change, I wanted to bring up a couple people that have been part of that. Obviously, Jim Brown has just passed away. Amazing, obviously the GOAT of football. But obviously there's a picture of Jim Brown in his heyday. But Jim Brown was a man who actually played football well, but was a human rights activist his entire life. He played football for a few years. And although he dominated the hell out of the sport, Jim Brown to me is much more of an icon for his human rights activity than he was as a football player, even though he retired at 30. I just thought I'd just give you a couple moments to talk about Jim Brown.
Sure. Well, let me say Jim was a man, he was a visionary in terms of what he could do with his body, in terms of the psychology that he learned from the athletic field, to realize to himself that there's no future in me running the way I'm running. Maybe I need to move on while I'm capable of moving on. He was one of the early guys that retired, as you notice, at that particular age. But then he fell into something that was new to him, which is acting. I think he made a nice career out of that. He was a motivator and an inspiration for these young gang individuals to try and sit them down and have some reasoning with them, and try and at the same time convey to those that had their fingers on the purse to let some money go and help these kids. He was the educator, and he was a good friend. And I mean, I could cap it off by saying he's a very good friend. And, you know, I remember telling somebody when I saw the last picture that he didn't look well. And then, boom, this happens. So, you know, it's like right now, you know, I'm behind Jim Brown age-wise, but I think I'm sitting in the front pew now. You know, when they leave, certain individuals such as myself, we slide into those slots now. So I would just hope that I would conduct myself in the proper manner that fits John Carlos from where I was at 23 years old to be that way at 78 years old.
Yeah. That being said, I know obviously you're coming up to this. I wanted to ask you your question about legacy, because obviously you have a statue that will stand forever at San Jose State. What you've done in your life has, you know, transcended that. You lose Jim Brown this week. Peter Norman, as you say, you get the phone call, you know, Peter Norman's passed away. One by one, we're all going to die. Nobody's getting out of this alive.
Absolutely.
What would you like your legacy to be for people being the Peter Normans of that statue, standing with you for civil rights, for humanity?
Yeah, when you ask me that question, man, I cannot go any further than tell you, go back to my dad, my mom. Okay, particularly my dad. I was talking to my father after I got back from Mexico, and my father was in the bed. He was getting ready to make his transition, but at that particular time, I didn't know. And my father said to me when I saw him, he said, "Son, why'd you do all those bad things?" And I looked at him. I said, "What are you talking about, Pop?" He said, "Go look in that paper, in that dresser there." And I got the paper. I was the New York Times. And it says, "John Carlos, neighborhood bum, troublemaker."
Oh.
And 30 days before that, it was John Carlos, neighborhood hero, our hero, because I broke the world record at the trials.
Yeah.
So when I read the article, man, they were talking about Professor Edwards, they was talking about Tommie Smith, they were talking about H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, and yours truly. And I read it and I went to my father and said, "Pop, do you know Harry Edwards? No. You know Tommie Smith? No. You know H. Rap Brown? No. Stokely Cop? No. You know John Carlos? Come on, son. I said, "No, Pop, do you know John Carlos?" Because if you read this, the same thing they're saying about you is the same thing they're saying about your son. Is that me? And my father, man, crying like a baby. I'm crying. And you know what I'm thinking? Man, if they could have my father believe these headlines, man, I got the world against me. Wow. Because they control people with headlines. Yeah. Many people never knew anything about John Carlos, never met me personally for 5 seconds. But they had judged me based on what the headlines had to say about John Carlos.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, man, you know, like all I do is leave myself in the sense of saying, when I die, man, I don't need them to do any more than put "Here lies a man," period, and leave it alone.
Gotcha. There's a picture I want to bring up as well. Peter Norman, when Peter Norman passed away, you and Tommie Smith had flown back to Australia, and just say a few words about that moment there.
Man, I was thinking to myself that how heavy that box was. I said, I thought maybe they put the gold bullion in Peter's back pocket or something. That box was so heavy. But I felt very proud that I could say I was there for my brother when he died, to take him to his last endeavors here on earth. It's something that I carry with me for the rest of my life. You know, I've just, you know, I could say, you know, God knew what he was doing when he put us together. See, a lot of people don't know, but I'm going to give it up on your show. A lot of people don't know that all three individuals there are Geminis.
Ah.
Okay. Mr. Smith, let's go for Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman is June 15th, 1943. Mr. Smith is June 6th, 1944. And I'm June 5th, 1945.
Wow. So you and Tommie Smith are like a day apart.
1 year minus a day.
Yeah. So that's and that's RFK's date too, when he was assassinated on the 5th and died on the 6th.
You assassinated on my birthday, right?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when he died, I was walking across the hotel and heard the sirens and the helicopters and kept walking, didn't know what was going on until I got back to my house and realized that they had shot him while I was walking by the hotel.
You were walking by the Ambassador Hotel?
That's right.
Wow.
The exact same time. And when I was going through there, you know what I was tripping about? What is my life coming to?
And then that happened.
Exactly what was running through my brain when I heard all of that. Where am I going with my life now?
Wow. And that was 4 months before you made the podium at Mexico City.
Huh.
Wow. Isn't it great what a director does in creating, a crazy story that God does?
hey man, as long as it's real.
Yeah.
Because I sit back, man, and I say there's no smoke dream in my life. Everything that happened to me in my life is real fact. And I don't think anybody can live a life better than I live. Even with the guys that got all the money, whether they gave their ass away to get the money or what. Bottom line is, they ain't as free as I am. I'm just happy that I am who I am, period.
I want to continue with the legacy side. That you've written a book with Dave Zirin, co-authored the book with you. We're going to bring the book cover up right here. But I'd like to know what the process was. Obviously, writing books isn't easy. What was the creative genius behind this and the process? Just say a few words about you sharing your story.
Well, I had gone to Dave and told Dave a couple of times that I wanted to do this book with him. And Dave telling me he thought it was a good idea that we did a collaborative book with Mr. Smith and I both. So I told Dave, I said, Mr. Smith, I don't believe he wants to do anything with me. So we need to do this. So we just happened to be somewhere together. I don't recall which city it was anymore. And we would just happen to be, like I say, together. And I said to him, I said, man, it's time that we get busy on this book. And I'm telling him about Mr. Smith. He said, I don't think so. I said, well, I'll tell you what, they're right behind you now. Maybe you should go check it out. And he went back there and he sat down with them for like 5 minutes and he came back and he said, man, we're going to do this book. Nice. And I said, what happened? He said, man, no, never mind what happened. Me and you going to do this book. So, I ain't getting into ups and downs or ins and outs about it. I'm just saying, that it all went well, in terms of he and I collaborating and putting out a book, because I think it's a book for years to come.
Yeah, and I think that just obviously your story, your narrative, and your legacy, and how you can create that, so that way there's no, interpretation for everybody else to make their own statement. The words are words in the book, and people have to take that for what it is as well. I wanted to follow up with one of the comments. I don't know if you know, but I used my Facebook, and I put out the picture of the 68 iconic image of you and Tommy and Peter on the podium. And I just asked people what it is that they saw. I just said, there's no judgment. There's no right or wrong answer. Please feel free to comment or, message me privately and tell me what you see. And I said to my friend at the time, I said, if there's 100 views on that and there's 100 comments, I anticipate that there's going to be 100 completely different comments on that based on the interpretation of what the projection of their eyes see. It's not even what they see. They could all say, I see this, I see that. It's the brain of what they make this image in their head mean. And just like I said, it was absolutely crazy that every single topic was projecting of what they saw, what they felt. There's a friend of mine, actress Madeline Smith Osborne. She wanted me to give you a quote when she had written on this. And I promised her I would read this to you. She said, quote, I just wanted him to know I was one, I have to imagine, of the little white kids in 1968 who got it, never forgot it, and revere him for it. And she wanted me to share that with you as well. And that's one of the very few comments, one of the many comments of people that chimed in on that picture, just to share what that experience was for them, because where they were when they saw that picture, or how they were when they were inspired by what you have done, even if they were alive like me after that picture was taken, has cemented in their childhood or their inspiration or their work ethic or their admiration for a better place to be, or envisioning where we could all be together if we all just put this bigotry aside, if we take our greed aside. I find it amazing that we can take a telescope and send it out into the universe, and it can take pictures of billions of light years away, but here on Earth, we can't solve greed. I find that absolutely fascinating. I think greed and fear are the two things that have divided us as human beings for every single reason that you say: religion, skin color, cult, like whatever it is. There's a human divide that divides us, and we will be a slave to that.
So Chuck, is like this, man. Like you said, it's amazing they can tell you they're going to land on the moon and land a half mile from where they say they're going to land, but they can't cure the things that they need to cure here. And it's a need to. You understand? They don't need to make a cure here. There's so many tentacles plugged into that, not needing to. You understand?
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's never going to happen the way we would like to see it happen, man. It has to be a new dimension and a new time, a new zone, because it looks like it's so easy until it's puzzling us. You know, we need a higher intelligence to come in and grab them by the neck and say, "This is the way we tell you need to go."
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about parallels from 1968 to now. So where does John Carlos see parallels of where we have made strides and where we hang our head in shame for where we haven't made strides?
Well, you know, I can go back to, you know, as I stated, you know, I think that the Republicans, I hate to get political.
No,
and
feel free.
I think that they have divided this country immensely. I think the Republican Party have views of yesteryears, I might say. Their views are back in that time. I think it's going to take something from out of this world, man, to get us back in sync. I don't know if it's going to be a major earthquake or major flood or God is going to come or the aliens going to land, but it's going to take something like of that sort to really get us to slow down and take a look at ourselves. You know, I hate to say it, man, because I mean we killing one another as human beings faster now than we ever did in history.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you sit back and say, well, with everything else going on, something's got to come from out of this world, man, to shock their ass enough. You know? Yeah. That's what I did in Mexico City. I shocked their ass. They still talking about it. But see, that's what they need again. They need shock treatment. But the only difference is that they ain't coming from man this time. It's going to come from a greater power than me.
You know, I want to go back to this because I mentioned Avery Brundage before at the start of the show. I did a podcast with a psychopathic narcissist. I've had him on the show twice now. And he provided me with an incredible amount of insight, because usually when you're a psychopath or a narcissist, you don't have the awareness to speak into your blind spots. Anybody who's speaking about psychopathy or narcissism usually comes from a psychiatric state or a psychotherapist state. And he's able to be the aware narcissist, talking about what we had on the show about toxic leadership. And I think there's a small minority of people in the world right now. And like John Lennon said, there's crazy people are running the world. And if I think that I call them out, they're liable to kill me, because they have their finger on the pulse. They have their finger on the money. And this toxic leadership is the one thing that we as the masses, 95% of us who aren't toxic, have the ability to be aware of that, see them, call them out, and then extract them out of those positions and instill people who actually have empathy for others, who have compassion for human life, who have the advancement of human race at the forefront as opposed to their greed front end loaded, and being able to push that through. And I think right now, with information coming out, I think this is the very start of what could be possible if we get rid of that toxic leadership like the Avery Brundages of the world. Your thoughts?
Well, man, you know, first of all, man, it's a thing called LOVE. You understand? They pushed it so far down to the ground, it's just hovering right now and trying to get oxygen to take off again. But that's what this society is lacking, man, is lacking love for one another.
Yeah.
You understand? I mean, we got more homicides, like you would think this was back in Cain and Abel days, you know, where kids is killing their parents or parents is killing their kids. You know, I mean, we in some dead times right now. So, you know, when you sit back, you think about what could I pump oxygen into? And that's to individually understand what love is and pass it to somebody else. Like I remember when I was in school, I told a young girl, I said, hey, baby girl, don't worry about it. I love you. She said, I don't need your love. I don't want your love. Who asked you for your love? And I looked at it and I told her, I said, well, listen, baby girl, I gave it to you and you can't do nothing but wrap it around. You understand what it's about. And then you can give it to somebody else. Understand? 7 years went by. I'm driving by this young girl out in the street. Mr. Collins, Mr. Collins. I turn around and go back. I think she needed a lift. I pull up next to her. She says, oh, Mr. Collins. And she looked down at her two daughters, and they was like little doll babies. She said, you see that man, Mr. Carlos? That's the one I've been telling you about. He's the one reason why I love you guys so much. Man, I can't tell you how I felt, how I feel right now just talking about it. Understand? It's about exemplifying love. And sometimes it have to be tough love too.
Yeah.
You understand? To put people in check. I mean, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, but when it comes time for me to have to apply tough love, I don't have no problem being that guy either.
No, I see that. And I mean, like you have to be disagreeable to implement change, because otherwise the people who are running the insane asylum are just going to keep it as, you know, like this is I'm comfortable. I'm making money. I don't want anybody messing with the system because the system works for me.
Well, you think about ecology right now, you know, because they're making money and shit. By the time we get ready to go down, they'll be dead.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, you know, they're putting dollar over the future of their generations to come. Because we have that I don't give a shit attitude. I want the money. You can't get on the airlines and think that you could be comfortable as you was 20 years ago. Instead, because they say we'll put 50 more seats in there because we want the money.
Yeah.
So everything is joy about money, and nothing is concerned about your comfort or your well-being or your progression in life. It's always pay and give you less for what you buy.
Shareholders.
Right.
Yeah, shareholders. I wanted to ask you before we go, I have a couple of topics before we go. Your heroes, people who've got you where you are right now, people you want to acknowledge.
Well, my hero, man, is my father, my mother, my wife, my kids, and God. You know, the people I admire: Muhammad Ali, Jack Johnson, Paul Robeson, Harriet Tubman, you know, Rosa Parks, and so shit, I'm crazy now, but there's so many of them out there that I admire for who they are and the roles they played in life. You know, and by mentioning the people that I mentioned, let me state that there's two types of individuals here. There's man-made icons, and then there's God-given icons. And you know what the difference is?
No.
The difference is, when last you heard of John Wayne?
I've never liked John Wayne.
I didn't ask you about whether you liked him. When last you heard about him?
I haven't heard about him in a while.
John Wayne was a man-made icon, right?
Yeah.
Shit. Now, how long John Wayne been dead and how long Frederick Douglass been dead?
Yeah, Frederick Douglass been dead for 150, 200 years.
And they still talking about Frederick Douglass like he walked down the street last week.
Yeah.
You understand? You sit back and say, okay, Rosa Parks, they still talk about Rosa Parks. They ain't talking about Liz Taylor no more.
Yeah.
See, these are God-given icons.
Yeah.
Opposed to that man-made icon.
Good point. I would be remiss because, like I said, I'm a track guy. I was good at it. I hated every moment of it. I'm much better a hockey player, obviously being from Canada. But I'd like you to give me your top 5 200-meter runners that you've admired or you like or you've watched and you marvel at.
Well, let me start off my top 5 200-meter runners.
Yeah.
Elder?
We're going to keep it light on this one as well because, like, I'm really interested in this one.
Okay. Henry Carr. Now, I'm not putting them in order. I'm just naming.
Okay. I was going to say. I'm not putting Henry Carr up there, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Bolt.
Okay, you have to use that one, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a given.
I don't like him, but go ahead.
Tommie Smith.
Okay.
Lyles.
Okay.
And John Carlos.
Okay, I'm going to give you a do-over. Obviously, John Carlos goes without saying, so we'll leave a spot for somebody else.
Say what?
I said, obviously, you're going to go with John Carlos, so I'm going to give you that one as a given. So I'm going to give that another spot to somebody else.
Oh, I got another slot.
Yeah.
Okay, let me think for a minute.
Because John Carlos is a given, obviously. So
Peter Norman.
Ooh. He still holds the record for the.
Not only did he hold the record, I think Peter Norman, when you look at the record, Peter Norman is the fastest white guy in the history of white sprinters.
Yeah, until he even beat me.
I mean, think about it now. Think about it. How many white guys you know ran 20 flat?
Yeah, like you can count them on one finger.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, you got to give him where he's due. And think about it. Peter ran against probably in the hottest time of track and field.
Yeah, that 200 meter that you guys had was the hottest in '68. You know, I've always wanted to ask you this, and I've always swore that if I did, as a kid, I'm watching that race, and I watched all the races I could get my hands on. We had a Betamax, and I got every single track and field that I could get, and watched all of them because I just wanted to learn. And I thought on my vision, you were so busy looking at Tommie on your left that your blind spot to Peter, did you not know Peter was capable of that race, and he just outleaned you by 600 of a second?
Look, man, first of all, I was giving Tommie the race. That's the first thing. I didn't go there to win the race. Had I wanted to win, I could have won the race easy. If you watch a race, you see me come off like 8 meters in front of everybody off the turn, and you see me pull back.
40 meters with the race. Yeah, you're the front runner. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm looking around and telling Tommie, if you want the medal, stop bullshitting and come on. So then Tommie shoots up on me. Remember, Tommie's supposed to have the groin muscle pull.
Yeah.
Okay. He's supposed to have the groin muscle pull. So then when we got down about maybe 8 meters away, 10 meters away, I said, oh shit, Peter Norman. And you see me to my left over to my right. Because the best part of Peter's race was the last 20 meters.
Well, he had the long legs for it, yeah.
Yeah, the last part of his race was the best part of his race.
Leg, for sure.
But when I turned you, because I had intentions when I made up my mind I was going to give Tommie the race, that I was going to take second.
Yeah. So
you see me looking around, and I'm looking like, when Peter went by, where am I relative to my place?
Yeah.
Had not done one of the top three, my trip to Mexico would have been in vain.
Yeah.
Okay. But everything worked itself, man. Everything worked itself out. I'll tell you one thing I was really happy when I looked up at the clock and I saw that Peter had run 20 flat. I was happy because ain't no white guy ever run that fast.
Yeah, right.
And then I looked and saw that I run 20 flat. And I don't think nobody looked around as much as I did striding down that track, the way I strided down the track and still ran 20 flat.
Yeah.
So it made me understand that I was on time for what I would have done.
Yep.
And I'm sitting back saying to myself, if Tommie threw his hands up like 6-7 meters before the tape, and if I'd have run the right race, I'd have been on what I thought, because I thought that at that time I was capable of running 19.2, 19.3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Come on, 19.2.
Easy.
That's Michael Johnson times in 1968.
I'm telling you, I believe I could have run that time easy back then.
Wow. So the one thing about the 200 meter that and you didn't say this, but when Minea had that record for decades, that he held that, I always said Carl Lewis, who at the time was the greatest 200 meter runner of his generation, undoubtedly never lost a 200 meter race, gold medalist, like LA Games, Seoul. And he couldn't get within 0.03 of a second of Minea's record. And then Michael Johnson comes by and destroys it by 0.4 of a second. I want a piss test. I mean, I'm looking for something like that because that was the hardest record for anyone. It stood for decades. It was like a Bob Beeman record.
A lot of them could have taken the piss test.
Yeah.
Not but just, what you think about him. A lot of them could have took the piss test. And let me tell you why. My beliefs are that they turn their heads to let them do that is because they wanted to wipe out the records of 68.
Yeah.
All the records that we set, they wanted to get us out the books. And the only way they can get it out the books is because they let it go for 20 years trying to break it. They couldn't even get close.
Yeah.
Then they start turning their heads and let these kids do what they're doing and start knocking it off one at a time.
Yeah.
Right?
And they has record stands.
Right. So, I mean, I sit back and look at them. I know what's going on. So I just look at them and smile. See, because when I was running and when I was running world records, they would take the records away from me. And I asked them questions like, man, I'm 10 yards in front of the field. How can I run 9-1 and they 0.2 of a second behind me? You get them 9-3.
Yeah.
And they would shrug their shoulders while I'm not the head timer, tell me stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'll stop running for time and I'll just run to give the people a good show for their money.
Yeah. I mean, track and field gone. Like I said, Jim Brown was a great man who played football really well, but his real legacy wasn't about football. It really was, if you want to look at the man, what was the God-given celebrity versus the man-given celebrity as well. Before we go, I thought one of our sponsors, which has been very generous, has reached out to us and asked me to donate to your choice of charity or organization, the Mixed Chicks Hairline as well, for anybody of your choice. I want to thank Brad and Wendy from Mixed Chicks for creating that opportunity. So I'm going to put you in touch with them as well. And I just want to thank them as well, just to say thank you for the product donation as well. I really, truly believe, I say this on the start of my podcast, that there's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair. And without that confidence level that you get as far as, what my hair looked like in the 80s versus what my hair looks like now is two totally different Chuck Basties. So I want to thank our good friends at Mixed Chicks for creating that opportunity for us as well, and giving some kids some hair love and giving them some small wins. Small wins becomes confidence. Confidence becomes work ethic. Work ethic becomes better results. And that's what we can do, is we can help these young kids these days and giving them small wins. What do you think?
That's wonderful, man. That's wonderful. Your Mixed Chicks, I think they're on the point. My wife is a retired beautician, so she will know the products. She will give to the kids to have them to rely on their product and push their entity down the line.
Yeah. Well, John Carlos, I know we have to let you go. I'm remiss by this, but I'm sure that you took the time to reach out. Sorry about the first initial phone call when I thought you were punking me as well, but I want to thank you for being on the podcast. It's been my great honor to have your story here.
Hey, Chuck, it's been fantastic, man. I'm glad that we got it done.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got it done.
We're looking at a
chance to meet, man. I get up to Canada anytime. Hopefully we get a chance to meet up there.
Yeah. One last question before we go, because this is the last thing I'm supposed to ask you, is I want you to ask John Carlos, was it worth it? If John Carlos at 78 goes back to talk to John Carlos at 23, what does he say to him?
Absolutely, it was worth it. Absolutely, it was worth it.
And what does 78-year-old John Carlos say to 23-year-old John Carlos?
Stand for what you believe in and believe in what you stand for. You understand? You got to believe it. And the only way you can really truly get to believe it is to understand it, to research it, to make sure you're correct about what you believe in, so you can articulate when they come to you, because they will come to you.
It's well said. Winston, I want to thank you for your help, for facilitating our interview with your father. And John Carlos, thank you very much for being on Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. It's been my great pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks, Chuck.
That is John Carlos, Dr. John Carlos, who has just put a perma smile on my face today, joining us to talk about humanity, empathy, sports, and all the things that we can use to create a better future for our kids moving forward right now. I'll bring up my producer, Cam LaRock, and get Cam's big takeaway right now. Cam, what were your big takeaways?
I think, Chuck, hearing that story from John there about just being able to interact with MLK, and especially hearing stories from John through MLK is insane as well, especially when Martin Luther King told John there that he doesn't, or that his message isn't in the flesh, it's spiritually, and that he knows his message will live on. That's some powerful stuff right there, and it's got me all messed up right now, honestly, just thinking about that.
2 white guys being all messed up. Go figure that, right? I'm just encouraged because I think there is possible outcomes that we can now create, with love, like John said, with empathy, the 2 great connectors, I think, in society. Rather than looking at division, I don't think it's a gender thing. I don't think it's a race thing. I don't think it's a religious thing. I think it is a toxic leadership thing. I think you have those people at the top that have spent thousands of years dividing us as humans into subcategories, so that way it fills their greed and it fills their pockets, and it runs wars, and it runs companies, and it runs industries. And I think we're all missing the point when we start talking about religion or skin color or eye color or whatever the sexuality, the human construct that we've created to divide ourselves as opposed to uniting together. And just like what Jane Elliott said, there's one race, it's the human race.
Yeah, we all human.
It. Yeah. So I want to thank our good friends over at Mixed Chicks as well for creating that opportunity for Dr. John Carlos. Generous donation of hair products to young kids. There's our great line. There's a picture of what Brad from Mixed Chicks had sent us. I love Mixed Chicks, and there's me wearing his mix hat there, looking proud as punch, with all that. I don't think I'll be able to use that all year. My go-to is that leave-in conditioner. It's changed my hair. I'm no longer Screech from Saved by the Bell in the 1980s, who made my high school life miserable. And now I can actually sit in my curl and not chemically straighten my hair and just like the skin that I'm in and not fight that curl that I fought my entire life. And I can't thank them enough for all the product development they've given us as well as to our good friend Johnny over at Holy Chuck Burger for putting on our podcast as well. Always having a stand for human rights, for equality, for mental health. You know why? Because people helping people, and that's powerful stuff.
It certainly is.
On Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your interest, and we'll see you next time.